Hello everyone, I'm Mike Proulx from Hill Holliday, and we are at Hill Holiday's Boston offices, which is the official headquarters of FutureM. I'm joined by Aaron Strout from Powered, who's the CMO, and thank you for coming in and talking with me.
My pleasure, thanks for having me.
I want to start off by having you just give a brief overview of what Powered is.
Sure, Powered is a social media agency, and we're about 80 people. We are headquartered in Austin, Texas. We have offices in New York and in Portland, Oregon. And essentially we help big companies, Fortune 500 companies, think through their strategy. We help them build Facebook presences, Twitter, YouTube channels, and then also help them with things like private and public communities and advocacy programs.
There's a general trend happening where all media, to sound cliche, is becoming social. You look at what's coming out with Google TV, Apple TV, Boxy. So you're taking what was a traditional medium and making it a lot more social. Can you talk a little bit about your perspectives on how brands should engage in location-based social networks, especially in light of the fact that Forrester Research 2 months ago was advising brands to wait and see until there's more of a critical mass?
Keep your eye on this. If you can do some experiments that are not super costly. Coach did one recently where it was a local experiment in New York giving away some merchandise. Test your way into this. Play with things like Foursquare, play with Scavenger, play with Gowalla. My contention is, and I made this at a conference last week, I made this point and I'll make it again today, it's incumbent upon businesses working with the location-based service providers to create the right incentives to get people to check in, because there's a huge upside to the businesses, but they need to give. People aren't going to just check in for the sake of checking in. I mean, there will be geeks like myself, probably yourself, that do that, but the normal, average, everyday person isn't doing this regularly.
What's your perspective on what motivates somebody to actually check in?
It depends. You know, some people do it for the gaming aspect, the pride. Some of it is if I'm a certain bar, it actually is pretty cool to become the mayor. Or I was the mayor of a place called the Salt Lick, big barbecue joint down in Austin. A lot of people, I think, it's going to be voting with their wallets, or maybe it's just a plaque up on the wall. You know, if Mike is the mayor of the local coffee shop, whether you get a 50 cents off your cup of coffee every day or not, that's kind of cool, right? It says Mike's a loyal customer. We see that Mike is a loyal customer, and we're going to recognize that. I think for a lot of people, so I give Target as an example. What if I checked into Target and Target spun the roulette wheel and gave me anywhere between 5 to 95% off every time I checked in? And when I did, there would be a time-bound period. It would be at that store. But say I hit the lucky dial and I get the 95, the one in the 10,000 times or whatever. Then if I shared that with my network, they gave all of the people that were in my network for another time-bound period, say 2 hours or 4 hours, that same discount. Then it's not only valuable to me, it's valuable to Target because I'm bringing more people into the store, and it's valuable to my network, so I'm not just noise to them checking in. They want to look and say, wow, I see Aaron checks in a lot of times, and he gets these great discounts, and when he does, I can get these great discounts. Then it's a win-win-win.
CMOs are starting to make their plans and set their budgets for next year, 2011, as they continue down the road of making plans and thinking about next year. What's your perspective on how they should be entering the new year in terms of marketing?
Yeah, I think it starts with strategy. So I would say that regardless of what you do, whether you focus internally, whether you work with your agency, sit down and make sure you've got a strategy. That means make sure all of your social presences tie together, and ideally they tie with your business goals. Sometimes they're more related versus directly impacted, but there should be some correlation there, so when you go to measure it, you understand that it moved the needle. So I think that's one, and then making sure that you have a Facebook presence and that it's respectable. That's sort of the new website, right? You remember back into the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, where it was a bit embarrassing if a company didn't have a website. Well, it's becoming embarrassing if a company doesn't have a Facebook presence, and a Facebook presence with some critical mass. That doesn't mean you need to have 1 billion customers or 1 million customers, but you should have more than 1,000 or 5,000. And I think the last thing is just start thinking about how you can really meaningfully tap into your customers and activate them to get them to do things. but that's a two-way street. And whether it's giving them good content, whether it's giving them incentives, whether it's giving them a pat on the back and having a conversation with them, I think those are three things that people really should be thinking about.
This is FutureM Week, and we're here to celebrate innovative things that have been happening in marketing and communications. What things are catching your eye in terms of innovation?
Yeah, so I think the things that I like the most, I mentioned the augmented reality that Yelp is using with Monocle. I think that's really cool. It's very primitive, but it's the type of app that can really add a lot of value down the road. But for me, the three things that I'm really focusing on are local and location-based, and the two are different, but obviously tied together. AOL is making a big push to see if they can own the whole local landscape, because Yellow Pages has been the closest thing, I think, to people really figuring this out in the past, and that's not the best model per se. And then the third is curation. And curation meaning that the more you can go through and handpick what's valuable. So you use technology to find some of the best and bubble up some of the best in an automated fashion. And then you use people to go in and look and sort of handpick these things. Those are the things that I would say keep an eye on in the future.
Aaron, I want to thank you again for talking with me. On behalf of FutureM and Hill Holliday, I'm Mike Proulx.